Mujambo Espresso Talk Today community. Aquaba to the Espresso Talk Today show. Welcome to Espresso Talk Today. I'm Amma Robin, host of this great and groundbreaking podcast show. If you're just joining us, then I wish you an especially happy and hearty Aquaba welcome to the show and to the Espresso Talk Today community. Our community of amiable intellectuals welcomes everyone. We discuss concepts here. We listen to concepts and ideas. We share concepts and ideas. Nothing is off the table. This is how we grow and thrive as a community. So, asante sana to all for joining us today. Let's get to it. Today's show concludes our series of Black Love episodes, and it's the perfect show to conclude our focus on Black love. Today's show discusses Black women boldly showing love for themselves through refusal resistance. These accomplished and amazing women showed the courage to prioritize and protect themselves and their mental and physical health, all by saying no, all by refusing. I'm joined in today's uncommon conversation by Elder Mel and my dear sister-in-arms, Diane, who will share the stories of these amazing women. If you don't know them yet, you're definitely going to know them after the show, and you will never forget them. So get into a comfortable position, take a deep breath, quiet the mind, and listen in, community. Hey, Mel.
Hi, Robin. How are you doing?
Doing good, thanks. And you?
Great. I'm doing great.
Well, you can see that I am having an espresso with a friend. This is Diane Bradley. You remember Diane, I think.
I do. Diane, how are you?
Hello. It's good to see you all and great to be on the show.
So, yeah, Diane, you've been really busy these past years. I mean, you and I know each other since college, which we're not even going to talk about how far back that is. But
Yeah,
you've been very busy lately. What you
I
been?
have. I have. Yes. Actually, just to kind of give you a little brief update on what's been going on with me the last 20 plus years. I've actually been a practicing attorney in Washington, D.C. I actually have been working for a number of organizations and federal agencies that deal in public interest law. I've been a civil rights attorney actually for well over 30 years, and it's my passion because I'm very interested in trying to ensure that there's equal opportunity and a parity for all people, and particularly people of color, and to help them address and help our community address the issues that affect us directly with regards to our well-being, health, our professional lives, our personal lives, and whatever way I can help advance that opportunity, those opportunities, as well as our well-being in world society.
Well, I can see that's why I have a hard time getting you on the phone. I think you're really busy.
Yes, that amongst my riding my bike.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, I heard that you do like 100 miles. Wow.
Yes. It's definitely my way to kind of unplug and allow me an opportunity to get out and get some exercise, to decompress, to help, take myself into a different place so that I can continue to do the work I do and enjoy life in different ways.
It's
Wow, Mel, so
amazing.
you up for that too?
I walk.
That's great.
Today I walked over 6,000 steps.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you. You got
That's
me
great.
beat. I think I've done 300 today.
Yeah. Well, all this talk about sports makes me actually, been really missing the Olympics lately. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, before that, I watched the European Football Championships, went straight to the Olympics. And, this 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, well, it's over. But I do think it was one of the most exciting Olympics that I can remember. And I was really, really impressed with what black women were doing from all over the world. I mean, just making a history in so many different ways, especially the women who are mothers, who've become mothers.
Yes, yes, definitely. Alex and Felix was
Yes.
definitely a showstopper, and she was able to show that, the fact that she has a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, that she was still a top world-class athlete and was able to take home a medal. So I'm very proud of her. Very proud
Very
of
proud of her. Me too. Me too. And Nike, I hope you're listening. Hope you
her.
watched. Yeah.
Kudos to Alex and Felix.
Oh yes, yeah. She gets a huge shout out, man.
Yes, big track star.
Very impressive. But I do think one of the Olympic athletes who made history, but not on, she wasn't doing her event at that time, but is actually in her courage not to compete, was Simone Biles. And
Yes.
I mean, everything was Simone, and it went in a completely different direction. And do you guys remember anything about Simone?
Yes, I actually watch the Olympics, and I look forward to it every 4 years because I consider myself an amateur athlete.
All right.
I used to run track in high school, and actually felt that I was one day, would always dream maybe I could be one of these athletes, high performing athletes and Olympians. But yes, I did watch the Olympics this year, and I watched Simone Biles, and also followed her story with regards to her decision not to compete,
Yeah.
and the several of the uh, team performances, as well as in her own overall all around competitions. And she was considered the face of the Summer Olympics because of her previous um, contributions, as well as achievements in the sport. And as we all know, she decided to withdraw from a number of the competitions based on mental health reasons.
Yeah. Good for her. Wow.
Yes, yes, yeah. Yeah, and I think largely one of the big issues that came up during the Olympics, and also her decision to withdraw based on, as she had defined it as twisties, she was experiencing the twisties, and to define that for those who don't know what that means is that basically she felt that she was not feeling in alignment. Her mind was not in alignment with her body, and that she was losing her spatial awareness in the air when she would do flips and so forth. And it was a result of what was going on with her emotionally as well as psychologically. And it's unfortunate that it required her to withdraw from the events. But I think it was very important, and I applaud her for putting herself first and not putting herself at risk, by taking on these very, dynamic types of twists and turns and jumps and all the things that are required of a gymnast. And she looked at her own wellness as a priority and not competing at that level.
I completely agree. Serious act of courage. And yes, I was disappointed. I really wanted to see her, compete in all of the different events. But when I read about what was going on and I mean, of course, you can see, watching them, you can tell it's a dangerous sport, and that one misstep can have a person end up being paralyzed.
Yes, or
But
worse.
yeah, or
Yes,
worse.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
And so I'm
yes,
very impressed with her courage to stand up to basically, I mean, for the country, the United States, and in part to the world too, and let people know what's
absolutely.
going on.
Yes,
I
because
think,
everyone,
sorry.
yeah, everyone was very much looking forward to, her competing, and for that matter, performing at the height in which she does. She's created a number of new performances on during gymnastics, as well as on the floor, as well as the beam, and some other of her events, and they've named them after her. So a lot of people were very, very disappointed. But again, I think she did what she needed to do to take care of herself. Because I think one of the things, particularly amongst Black athletes, is that there's definitely a very high sense of pressure, as well as a sense of performance that they had to perform at the highest level in order to maintain their elite status as athletes. And, not to say that all athletes don't, have to deal with the stress and pressure of performing at a high level. But for Black athletes, I think it's another layer that they have to deal with, particularly when they're competing in predominantly white sports. And that's, the other outside pressures of the media, perhaps maybe putting additional pressures on them being the first, in their sports to achieve at certain levels, in addition to sometimes some of the insensitivities that the media and the journalists, the type of questions that are asked, or the social media posts that people make about Black athletes, or some of their ways in which they handle certain things. So I think,
Mhm.
in this instance, she had just lost her aunt unexpectedly right before the Olympics.
Yeah.
And it just really took a toll, in addition to the pressures of the Olympic performance.
I think that's true. But I admired her too for supporting her team.
Yes,
She was there. She didn't leave the floor. She, hugged them when they came off of their event. She was definitely, I think, a driving force for their success. So I
absolutely.
would really admire her for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And basically, she was considered the de facto team captain, in terms
Mhm.
of leading the team to its success. And, she competed in the balance beam and won a bronze medal, which helped, increase the number of medals that the gymnastic team was able to bring home, as well as the overall Olympic team
Mhm.
uh, who competed there for the U.S. In addition to, yeah, as Mel had mentioned, just providing the emotional support, which, all athletes, particularly team, you know, uh, athletes who could compete on teams, they need every member there, and particularly one who is, such a big figure as Simone Biles, for her to be there, I'm sure
Mhm.
meant a lot to them. So,
Absolutely. And it was just very, very impressive. And it was upsetting to hear some of the comments that people were making about her, calling her, a coward, that she's letting down her team and she's letting down herself and she has to be stronger than all of that. And they just, I think particularly with Black athletes, and we've talked about this in other shows about athletes who are activists, they just dehumanize us. We're not people anymore. We are just performers, and athletes are just entertainers. And if you don't go there and entertain, then you're not doing your job. And
right,
that, to me, I just found to be, just horrible, the way that the way that she was talked about, but she withstood it,
that's
and
right,
she
that's
changed
right.
the playing field for everybody.
Precisely. And she put herself first, her well-being first, which again is important. And that's part of the importance where, as you had mentioned, many people believe that athletes are performers first, and that they basically their job is to perform and to entertain. And in this instance, she found it necessary to, take care of herself and her well-being, and to ensure that she, would be able to compete in, future Olympics or future world competitions by taking care of herself now. And it's the same issue that came up with Naomi Osaka during
Oh,
the French
yes.
Open.
Mhm.
Yes, she also, again, was criticized when she decided during the French Open to withdraw based on mental health reasons. And again, to take care of herself first. And this, again, I think it's a real misconception amongst many people about mental health and taking care of yourself and the impact. It's considered, if in fact Naomi Osaka had, pulled the ACL, or, injured her arm in some way, people would have probably had more compassion for her since she withdrew. But because it's a hidden or silent, or it's something that you can't, mental health you cannot see, many people are very much more critical of her decision, because they can't, see that in fact she's actually injured, or for that matter hurting.
Well, I think
Yeah,
that
I think I would.
I think the tennis federation actually took it to a different level because before she withdrew, she also said, "Well, look, I will play, but I just will not do these press conferences because they cause me so much anxiety." And then she was fined and all of that, and so they kind of upped the ante where I think that it didn't need to go that way.
I think that's true. And for Simone Biles and also for Naomi Osaka, I would give them both a gold medal for courage because what they did
Yes, yes,
took a lot of courage. I mean, to the criticism that they received from not only the press but the associations they had to deal with, and probably some in the audience. You know that by the audience, I mean certainly the viewing audience as opposed to the people who were there. It took a lot of courage to do what they did. So as far as I'm concerned, they both get a gold medal for courage.
I agree. I agree because again, dealing publicly with mental health issues already takes a lot of courage, but particularly these particular athletes who are on a world stage who
Mm-hmm.
decide that they are going to take care of themselves first and basically, do things that will take care of them to ensure that they take care of their mental health as well as their well-being. I think it takes an incredible amount of courage, and I commend them both for what they've done.
I really do too. And Mel, you mentioned somebody too. She's not an athlete. She's a professor or something like that, a journalist.
Yeah. She's not a sports figure, although,
Okay.
athlete, how do you define that? But anyway, her name is Nicole Hannah Jones. She's a journalist. Actually, she's an investigative journalist, and she's well known. She really received a Pulitzer Prize for the work that she did on the 1619 Project. I don't know if you've heard of the
Oh,
1619 Project, but um, it's a very, very important piece of history. And actually, there's a book coming out. I think it comes out in November of this year. Although some of the essays in the books I think have already been out. But anyway, it was developed by her to reframe the history by placing the consequences of slavery squarely where it should be, and the contributions of Black people squarely where it should be. That this strengthened actually the United States, and she brought this out. This is 150 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, so it was kind of like an anniversary. So she's very, very well known and very well written, and she's given a lot of speeches on this. And she was invited by the person at the University of North Carolina to be a Knight, they call it a Knight Foundation scholar. A Knight Foundation being the ones that sponsor this. But anyway, she was to be a tenured professor. And so she went through the process, and the process included, teaching a class, before some of the people who observed her, and also submitting an application and that type of thing. And she submitted her application to the Board of Trustees. And one of the more important or influential, I should say, people on the Board of Trustees uh, just kind of sat on the application because they felt with the 1619 project that what she was doing, was uh, actually making kind of Black people more important and denigrating white people, which is not true at all. But that's the way that person felt and had that much influence on the Board of Trustees. So she was not, her application was held for a long, long time. And there was a lot of uproar about it. And so they finally pulled it forward and decided to ask her, to give her tenure. But she said no. Now, this is what we're talking about. Simone Biles says, no, I'm not competing because, and Osaka said, no, I'm not doing this. This is another no. So, even though she could have had that position and initially applied for it, she said no and accepted a tenured position at Howard University. So I think this is more of the Black women resistance. We have choices and we can say no. And sometimes no is the proper answer. So I admire her for that.
absolutely, I do too. And I was thinking about who was it? Deirdre Cooper Owens, who had talked about
Yeah.
enslaved women who were having all of these medical experiments done on them, and
Mhm.
people, she was saying they did not have the right to say no. They were just considered property. And today it's really good to see that Black women are, well, it's kind of hard to say, but we are actually asserting our power now.
Mhm.
And those women couldn't, but we definitely can, and we are. And how unpopular it is, that I don't understand. That it is an act of resistance, maybe, but it's also, considered something that upsets a lot of people, that we are saying no to being treated in a certain way. And I wonder why that is. Do you have
Yeah.
thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely always been a tension between Black people, and particularly Black women, taking care of themselves and their profession, or for that matter, what society expects of them, or, what their expectations are with regards to what we do. There's been a number of studies that shows that, when Black people are admitted into hospitals and they're in pain, that there's a expectation, or for that matter, they're not treated with painkillers, or for that matter, drugs that will help with the pain, because the expectation is that they have a higher threshold of pain, or that we can manage that. And I think that kind of translates as well when we're talking about issues of mental health, and for that matter, us taking care of ourselves. And when we say no, I need to take care of myself, that people have a resistance to that idea, because maybe there's a perception that we should be able to push it through, or for that matter, take it on the chin, or shake it off, or go through it, because it's a similar, like a workhorse. You work them until they fall out into the field, and then you get another mule. It's no different. We are people too, and there's a lack of understanding or appreciation of the human element that we go through, that's oftentimes far greater than, others who compete in the same arena, whether it's professionally, as this woman, as Mel had mentioned, or whether they're athletes. So I think that kind of plays a role in terms of the unconscious bias that may be taking place with regards to the resistance to, Black people and Black women saying, no, I need to take care of myself.
Wow. Wow.
I was reading where Simone Biles said that she's in therapy now, and she feels this is a good thing. In her initial meeting with her therapist, she said nothing. She said she didn't say anything, and the I guess the reason is, and this is pervasive, I think, in the Black community, is if you go to a therapist, people think you're crazy. But that, and she said that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not true at all. That we have physical health, we have mental health, and we've got to take care of both of those. So sometimes we have to say no, in order to take care of our mental health as well as our physical health. So it's just an interesting issue about how we perceive therapists and what they can do.
Right, and mental health overall, because again, like I said, many people, attach the stigma, as you had mentioned, that if you need, to seek a psychologist or therapy or counseling, that in fact you can't handle your own problems, that you're,
Mhm.
that you're weak, that you're unable to, manage your own internal self. When in fact, if in fact, using the analogy, if you broke your arm, you would, have no problems going to see a doctor about that, because it's beyond your ability to be able to heal it. Why not be able to feel like you can do the same when your mental health is at risk, or you're injured, or you're hurting in that regard? So I think it's the part of it is largely in our community is removing the stigma from mental health, and using resources that are available that help us heal.
And that's actually something Meghan Markle had mentioned, or should I say, the Duchess of Sussex mentioned. Um, yeah, that she was going through a lot of. She felt racially motivated attacks by the press and by the tabloids in England, and she felt that she wasn't getting any support, and that she actually said, what, I feel like I need some help. That I'm at risk of suicide. I'm afraid to be alone. And
Mhm.
they just told her, Well, that's not good for the institution, meaning the British royal family.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just refused to give her any help whatsoever. And finally, then she said no too. And great kudos to Harry. Harry said, "This is my wife. I have a child. Nope, we're all saying no, and we're getting out of here." And I found that very impressive for the whole family, to stand up to such a powerful, family, that she stepped into, just less than what 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But she was in a really bad space, and she was not afraid to admit that her life was at risk, her mental health and her very life was at risk. And people still got angry about that and said that she has no right to do this, that she has to keep up her public appearance and her public face, and she has to support this, colonialistic racist royal family. And no. And she said, no, I'm supporting me and my family. So thought that was very impressive of her.
Yeah, no is a very, very important word. And Robin, you mentioned something about Rosa Parks saying no.
Yeah, yes. And, I mean, I guess people probably say, oh, yeah, that's right. She refused to get up and give up her seat and all of that. And so I went back and I looked in this book I have, Sisters in the Struggle, American Women in the Civil Rights and Black Power Movement. And I found a chapter actually by Miss Parks called Tired of Giving In. And if I could just, yeah, and I always have my books with me. If I could just read a couple of paragraphs from this, because I thought it was really quite good, where she says here, people always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not tired physically, or no more tired than I usually was at the end of the working day. I was not old, although some people have an image of me as being old then. I was 42 years old. No, the only thing I was tired of, and that was of giving in. And the driver, she says here, the driver of the bus saw me still sitting there, and he asked, was I going to stand up? And I said no. And he said, well, I'm going to have you arrested. And she says, okay, well, you go ahead and do that. And then he later on comes back and he says, why didn't, oh, she says to him, why do you all push us around? And he said, I quote him exactly, I don't know, but the law is the law and you're under arrest. And she says, as we were driving to the city desk at the city hall near Court Street, one of them asked me again, why didn't you just stand up when the driver spoke to you? And I didn't answer. I just remained silent all the way to City Hall. And I mean, she knew what saying no was going to happen to her. She was going to go to the jail. She might be beaten, and or worse.
Mm-hmm.
But for her, she said, you know, I was just tired of giving in. And I have a feeling that all of these women that we've talked about are just tired of giving in too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I would agree. And that I think helps illustrate and underscore that, when we're talking about mental health and for that matter, our well-being, we have to be able to say no and put boundaries around those forces that bring, that may be, add to our stressors, that adds to our burden, that adds to the daily strife, and put ourselves first and be able to say, no, I am important. I deserve to have good, to feel good, or to be in a place where I am not feeling that I'm being, pulled down into the abyss, if you will, of life or of the pressures of life or family or society and so forth. I matter. I should be able to feel, good about myself or take care of myself in a means and a manner to ensure my health and well-being.
Totally agree. And I mean, Mel, do you think that that kind of brings up what we were talking about with John Henryism with Professor Sherman James a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's just pushing yourself like the John Henry in the story. Trying to beat the called he was called the steel driving man. Trying to go beat the machine. you push yourself to the point that there's nothing left. There's nothing left. So saying no is really, really important. But I think no has a connotation like we fear rejection. If we say no, you know, somebody or something will reject us. If we say no, we might be turning down some work we could get, or invitations, or relationships, or that kind of thing. So no is a very, very important word. But as you and Diane have both said, we need that word to protect ourselves. Sometimes we need it for a lot of reasons. So we've got to learn to say no when that's the proper response to the situation. But it is like John Henryism. You just go to your drop. And that could have happened to Osaka. That could have happened to Biles. That could have happened to a lot of people um, who then had the courage to say no, and it didn't happen.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think, again, it underscores what we had shared earlier in terms of our position in life in going back, several years ago, whether it's during slavery or during the Jim Crow era or sharecropping, we were expendable, you know. Again, in terms of the work that we did was very hard labor, required a whole lot of, us to expend ourselves, physically, but also mentally, because again, because of the abuse that took place during those periods of times, some of those things, those insidious things that, and for that matter, the vestiges of slavery, as well as the oppression and Jim Crowism, excuse me, all those things, again, takes a toll. And again, it's carrying the weight of the world, if you will, on your shoulders, and not be at that time, not being able to even say no, during those periods of times. And basically, they looked at you as expendable. If you weren't able to pick a certain, number of barrels of cotton or sugar or whatever the product was, you basically did it until the sharecropper, or for that matter, the master said no, or until you fell out into the field. And if you did fall out in the field, they drag you off and bring somebody else in to replace you. And there was no regard for you as a physical human being. You were just, again, a cog in the wheel and part of, a machinery where they looked at you in a very dehumanizing way.
Mm-hmm. So the enslaved people didn't have the right to say no.
Right.
We do have the right to say no now.
Yes.
So, I think, no has become a very, very important word that we need to spend a lot of time on and give consideration to.
But I think you both bring up a good point about this, and I still think about Deirdre Cooper Owens, and she was saying, she was at the end talking about this young enslaved woman who thought she was pregnant, and then she thought she wasn't, and she was just being used to have more and more babies. She'd had 5 babies in 5 years, and she was very, very weak, and I mean her body was being used up. And she didn't have the right to say no to being impregnated over and over and over again. And I mean, that's just it was such a horrible story to hear. But I do think that this the John Henryism is coming back into this, because we're talking about this high effort coping, and that as Black people, we are a resilient people, and we want to succeed, and we will work hard, and we will take a lot of abuse, but it does take its toll. And just like in John Henry, the story at the end, after he did actually beat the machine, he dropped dead right there. And I think slowly it's affecting, from what Professor James was saying, it's affecting the health and mental health and physical health and well-being of African Americans, causing things like chronic illnesses and early mortality. And
Yes.
so when you say no, you're actually, as my coach would say, you're saying yes to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important to know and to emphasize that, in the current times, of course, we're not, having the same type of of challenges and struggles with regards to the physical uh, uh, labor that we had to endure, you know, our grandparents and great grandparents and ancestors. But it still exists, and I see that in my work, every day, in terms of the civil rights community, where when people step up and say no, I refuse to be abused, in terms of being treated a certain way in the workplace, or that I'm not getting my due respect and due types of recognition in the work that I do, or the pay that I receive, or the promotions that I'm entitled. Again, it's the same concept of having to work very, very hard and not get the rewards that generally the white population or others may receive. And again, not being recognized in terms of taking forth those type of challenges, and saying no, enough. I need to be recognized. I want, I deserve, I earned my this recognition or this pay, or whatever other ways in which we work hard and put forth the effort, but are again maybe being dehumanized or not seen as individuals and humans who need to be taken care of in a number of different ways, whether it's not on the recognition of work or the pay, but also being able to take time off and be able to take care of ourselves in that way. Oftentimes we're looked at in a very one-dimensional way, versus that in fact we are human beings too, and we need to take care of ourselves, in the workplace, at home, and elsewhere.
It's really interesting. Nicole Hannah Jones, when she was turning down the job at the University of North Carolina, the night chair that she was offered, she said, and these are her quotes. One, "These times demand courage." I think we're seeing that now. The second one was, "I do not want to win someone else's game." And I think that's really important. And and I think that's what we're looking at. There's someone else's game. And, we are saying, yes to winning that, then, we may be not on the right track.
Absolutely. Yeah, and burnout is a real concept, a construct, in terms of, again, having to put forth a whole lot of energy in someone else's game, or to be able to be successful in, the game of life, but not, putting forth the same type of energy, and ensuring our well-being is being taken care of as we engage in those type of activities, or demands in our lives. And that's where I think, again, it's important in terms of saying no and putting those boundaries around us, whether it's, in terms of your family, stressors, and being pulled in so many different ways, whether it's work, family, work-life balance, those type of things, again, is very important in terms of setting up those systems for self-care, because you got to have that balance to be able to take care of self, and make sure that you're able to perform, and that you are able to be the person that you want and need to be for yourself, as well as those who you care about and love.
I wonder if it's, as you bring up, self-care, if this is a lot about American culture, though. Um, I was thinking, I was watching Fox for a moment. I was just passing through. I swear I do not watch Fox News, but I heard one of the hosts talking about, calling self-care, and he almost spat on the floor, saying it as though, what is all this self-care stuff, that these athletes and people are talking about, that they don't have a right to that. And how do we treat, essential workers during the lockdown? I mean, most of them, I think, were, people of color, or certainly, people who with a lower income as well. And we didn't think anything about, or people didn't think anything about going up and not wearing a mask to someone who's working in a grocery store so that you can get food, or a bus driver, people, coughing without masks on the bus. And so I wonder if this is just a failing of another failing of American culture, you know.
I would agree. I think it's reflective in a number of different ways because again, it goes to the whole concept of, how do you treat your least um, uh, people in terms of people who have to do the grunt work or who have to, go out into, to their workplace because, they have to be able to pay the bills and keep the lights on and keep a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
And again, there's that dehumanization again that, in order to keep things running, we're going to put them out into, society without the protections that are needed in
Mhm.
order for them to be able to come back home and take care of their families. And I think it also, on a grander scale, the whole issue around the Black Lives Matters protest, and for that matter, the uh,
Absolutely.
the issues of, again, saying no, no more are we going to stand by and allow ourselves to be mistreated and to be, subject to police brutality or issues of where we're not being able to be treated in the same manner and fashion. And as a result, we just need to just take it on the chin. We are saying no
Mhm.
to, our communities, being abused and treated in an unlawful way. So, the issue of no and resistance, I think cuts across a number of lines in terms
Mhm.
of our society. And as you said, Robin, this is a part of the American culture where it's seemingly, at least in some sectors of society, they feel that it's okay to treat people in a very abusive and dehumanizing way, and not look at the human spirit, not look at people as human beings as they go forth and do their daily activities and deal with life.
I think that's true. And just kind of a play on words here. No, I think is a very, very important word that we've got to say more of. But what we're really saying is we're saying yes to ourselves. We
Yes,
say, yes, I'm worth it. Yes, I matter. Black
yes,
Lives Matter. Yes, I need this. Yes, I want this. So if no connotates in the wrong way, use yes, because when you say yes to yourself, I think you're making a big leap, toward your own mental health and your own well-being, I think.
Good point. And I think it takes us to a really, really important point. Um, what can we as Black women do to, for our self care and to support other women who are taking these, courageous stands? They shouldn't have to take those alone. What can we do to support ourselves and our Black sisters?
are utilizing those type of tools, are oftentimes very useful and helpful to help us through, difficult times and help us sort out those type of issues so that we can be more productive and also, address and improve our well-being.
Oh, okay.
I think that's true. Just a little to add to that, to modify it a little bit, is to say that I think the counselors and the psychologists that we use should be the culturally sensitive. They should understand our cultural issues. Unfortunately, the only, I think, 4% of the psychologists in the United States, are African American or Black. And we may not have access as we'd like to have to them, but I think we should try to seek them out for the kind of counseling so they can understand our cultural roots and what we're going through, and help us through that. And also, I think in addition, we can also form groups ourselves of people. I was reading a study, a psychological study, which said it really didn't matter what the education of the socioeconomic status of the person was, that if there were, other, Black people getting together, they found that there was a drop in the amount of stress associated with, the whole situation of racism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was really kind of startling. So, getting together among ourselves to discuss, our stressful issues, I think is really, really important. And I think that we need to do, more of that. It's more difficult because now there's a world and we're all spread out and all of that. But there are tools now, including the tool we're using here, Zoom, where we can get together and be with each other and moderate that stress level.
Very good point. Very good
Yeah.
point. And I think too, I know when I was reading in Sisters in the Struggle, the Rosa Parks chapter, she mentioned that um, she hadn't planned to do this. It just happened. But there were other people on the bus, other Black people on the bus, and she said everybody just got up and left. She said she does not fault them for that, but she said it would have made the whole thing so much easier if either any one of them would have come and stood with her, and maybe that's what we have to do too, so that Simone doesn't feel that she's out there by herself,
Mhm.
or and Naomi doesn't feel that, and Nicole, who's done some really fantastic work, doesn't feel that they're just out there on their own, that
Mhm.
they can be, just cut off the limb of that tree and they're gone. So we have to, I think, show outward support for them, even at risk to ourselves. We show the courage for them too.
Absolutely. And there's a number of associations and groups that are available to provide the type of resources and assistance for people of color, particularly like the Association of Black Psychologists. It's a vehicle and a resource for people to reach out to them, to find, people, psychologists who are African American, and also there's the ethnic minority psychological associations, again, who are focused and emphasize, treatment for, issues that are somewhat unique to the African American community or people of color, the
Yeah.
BIPOC community. So, there's a wealth of information on line that we can possibly Google and find. And as Mel had mentioned, we do need people who, are interested in helping, but also those who can be sensitive, culturally sensitive to some of the unique issues that we face in society.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, will you please send those forward those on to me, and I'll definitely put them up onto the website too. So people need to
Yes,
know.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
That's one thing that this month is a Global Black Mental Health Awareness Month, and
Mhm.
yeah, we have to remember that we are not alone in this, and yeah, there are resources out there, and you know, we have to talk to each other and listen and ask, how are you doing?
Mhm.
And really listen. So, and don't just
Absolutely.
assume that people know, oh, yeah, of course you can come and talk to me. Let them know,
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
safe
Don't
space.
make it superficial. Yeah. It'll
Mhm.
be, have that sincerity as part of it. Yeah, I'm going to listen to you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I also think not only seeking treatment, or help through counseling or therapy, but also exercise can be also a means and a mechanism and a part of the toolbox, to help relieve stress. Oftentimes, particularly during these COVID times, we're adding that as another layer of stress, in terms of the concerns that we have to deal and face with on a daily basis, whether it's our concern that we might, even though we may be vaccinated, that, we still may contract COVID, or there's a family member who
Mhm.
is in, struggling with the issues of COVID, or we
Mhm.
lost a loved one. So, in regards to working through some of those issues, just, unplugging at the end of the day and taking a 30-minute walk, is surprisingly very helpful with regards to releasing those endorphins and to relieve the amount of stress that you may, struggle with, or, taking out and riding your bike, or,
Mhm.
doing some other, activity, physical activity that help kind of release and reduce the stressors, of the day. So I would highly recommend exercise being one of those mechanisms or tools that we can include in our toolbox to help with our mental well-being.
Great. Yeah, I know, Mel, you were just saying that, walking just makes such a difference too. Go ahead and taking a
It
walk.
does. It does. Yeah. Yeah. I try to meet my goal every day. But also, there's so many apps. If you have a cell phone, there's so many apps where you can go in and you can exercise, with other people if you feel like, you need to be surrounded or you need some instruction on exactly how to do it. There are so many ways to do that. And I highly recommend, exercise as a way of reducing stress. I mean, it's been proven in so many ways that will reduce stress.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm a huge proponent, as most of the people who know me know, of meditation too.
Yes.
And, it could be a simple breathing meditation, or it could be, a guided, body scan meditation. It could be 1 minute, could be an hour. But just
Mhm.
regular meditation really does make a difference too. And it has that calming effect and gets you focus and clarity and real relaxation. And I think it's just really good for your mental and physical health too.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
so we have a
Absolutely.
lot of tools, as you said, in our toolbox. We have meditation, we have exercise, we have, therapy, we have, all these, biking, all these things that we can pull out, as needed for, keep our stress level at the lowest possible level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would add a spiritual component to it as well.
Mhm. Good. Hmm.
Many times, and particularly in the African American community, going to church or worship or, fellowship, doing things as a
Yes.
part of that ministry,
Hmm.
to help us, put things in perspective and recognize that, we have, our spiritual selves. We need to nurture our spiritual selves to help, bring some balance to our lives and
Hmm.
help us reduce those stressors in life that seemingly are tugging at us in all different ways. So again, to put emphasis around, you know, deepening our relationships with our spiritual selves and minds. And, that I think is also a good tool to add to the toolbox.
Such a
Yeah,
good point.
absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. We've got tools.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think one of the most powerful tools we talked about, though, was also, yeah, saying no,
Yeah.
and sometimes it has to start with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and particularly for women, I think it also plays a big role in terms of again
Mhm.
putting ourselves first because it is hard for
yeah.
oftentimes more so for women and to say no and to put boundaries again around ourselves when it's necessary to take care of ourselves because we
Mhm.
again have the tugs and the pulls from whether it's our children or work commitments, work responsibilities, uh, our obligations outside of the home, are pulling at us in so many different directions. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, we can't be everything to everybody. And if we don't put ourselves first, then, we aren't able to be the best that we can be to those who, mean most to me are meaningful to us. I often, say this to some of my friends, and I have to remind myself even, you know, uh, oftentimes when if you're on, an airplane and they're telling you, in order to take care of yourself, should there be an emergency, you have to put your mask on first before
Mhm.
you even attend to your child because you're no good to that child if you pass out or are not able to help them because you didn't take care of yourself first. So,
Mhm.
in that regard, I use that as an analogy to all things in our lives, and that we have to put on our mask on first so that
Mhm.
we can be the best that we can be to others. And
Mhm.
that's a good way in which, that a reminder for myself is that, I you know, like to be available to others, but I got to put my mask on first so that
Mhm.
I can breathe and be
Mhm.
able to do the things I need and want to do for others.
Great point.
I
Such a
agree with
good
that.
point. And unfortunately, I have finished my espresso, and because we're talking about good mental health here and well-being. I will not grab a second one. Okay. Even though I'm tempted. But wow, this has been such a interesting discussion. I've learned so much and so many
Yes,
interesting
I
things going
agree.
on. Great perspectives here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Well,
I enjoyed being on the show and being able to share with you and Mel,
Thank you.
be part of the
Well,
discussion in this important topic.
yeah. Thank you so much, Diane. It
we've
was
got
this was
tools.
great.
We've got
Yes,
tools.
we got tools. Yes, that should be the title for our next
Yeah, we got
Next one.
tools.
Yeah, we got
podcast. We got
tools. Well,
It was
yeah.
great seeing you again, Diane. Thank
Yes,
you.
it's good seeing you as well. And Robin, of course, it's always good to see you as well.
It's always great. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to having an espresso, another one with you. Maybe we'll have a
Yes,
double. Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. All right, ladies. Great. Thank you, sisters. And we'll see each other again soon.
Of
All
course.
right, thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Thanks for having me.
This ends today's Uncommon Conversation. Jumbo community, it's Amma Robin again. Wow, this was an amazing discussion, right? Am I right? Of course I'm right. Asante Sana to Elder Mel and Sister Diane for joining me on this show and providing their insights about the courage of Black women in difficult circumstances. Asante Sana to you for joining us today. We appreciate you so much, and you really are the reason that we do what we do every single day. I hope that you were as moved and interested by their stories as we were. Simone Biles showed incredible courage and strength to make her decision to protect her mental and physical health. I mean, imagine deciding you're not going to compete when you're at the Olympics. Of course, she did not get a lot of support. She was criticized, she was threatened, she was insulted. Professor Nicole Hannah Jones was also criticized and ostracized for her decision to join the faculty at Howard University rather than fight to be accepted at the university which did not value her incredible work and research. Then there was Naomi Osaka. She refused to meet with the media. She said she needed to protect her mental health. She was criticized and ostracized and actually punished with a fine by the Tennis Association. Meghan Markle experienced the same criticism, and she still is actually. These women showed courage and strength and character by choosing to protect their health. They practiced self care. They showed love for themselves. But many people did not show love for them. Many people still believe that they did not have the right to show that self-love and that do the self-care stuff that they needed to do. This is what Black people have always faced. Black people are not allowed to show that love for themselves or for others. I discussed this in the opening show in January called Love and Protest. I hope you heard it. But people still act as though Black people should not have control over their own bodies and lives. What does that sound like? Okay, I'll say it. Slavery. Many people believe that Black women, Black people, are supposed to just do what they are told. They're not supposed to think for themselves or make choices for themselves. All of the criticism and anger and disgusting comments have been directed towards Black women when they stand up for themselves. So Black love really does take courage and strength and determination, and these women showed it all. I noticed, and I'm not happy about how they did not get support from women's rights groups, from women's athletic associations, or even from healthcare professionals. These groups were glaringly silent. That did also happen with the situation with Sister Brittany Griner, too. As I've said, Black love is not supported. Black self love is not supported. It's criticized and it's punished. Fortunately, though, these women showed the love anyway. I am impressed, though, with the support and encouragement that they received from the Black community. We had their backs, and I think they knew it. I hoped it helped them to do what they needed to do for themselves and for us too. We always have to have each other's back. That's how a community works. It's a good lesson for us. Another major lesson today is that self love can sometimes mean saying no, setting boundaries, drawing lines, saying no, no, no as many times as you need to say it and as loud as you need to say it. That's what they did, and it was magnificent. Asante sana to them. Well done, sisters. And we are done with today's show and with our focus on Black love, which was the theme for the month of January. Honestly, though, Black love underscores all of the themes and all of the shows and everything that we do. Black love is why we do what we do. And you can join us every day to discuss these issues on Instagram at Ama Robin L. That's just the letter L, formerly Espresso Talk Today. Leave your questions, your comments, your reflections, just about anything that you want to say. We want to hear from you, and we are absolutely here for you. And if you think that other people would be interested in these topics, please, please, please feel free to send it to them. We got to start talking about these issues, and we got to keep talking about them. And if you want to keep discussing or just reading about these issues, then you should definitely subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Nomo Beat. That's NOMMO, Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there. It's never a dull moment, and there are lots of growth moments too. You can subscribe at Espresso Talk Today website, espressotalktoday.com, or on Instagram at Ama Robin L on my profile page. I'm Ama Robin for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe.